Hey guys, this is Jeff The Crippler Daniels, and you're listening to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling podcast. Tune in.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
This is Steve Bowtie Bryant here. Back in the 90s, I was a pro wrestling photographer for the South, and I released what might have been one of the original sets of indie trading cards. I ran across some of these original sets. They were up in Randall Fanning's attic all this time. PG-13 rookie card, Ricky Morton, George Weingroff as the Sheik, Chris Champion, Reno Riggins, Billy Montana, Gary Valiant, the Scorpion, the Medic, Rick Reynolds, Jeff Daniels, Mephisto and Dante, Ben Jordan, Steve Neely, Marcus Woodrow, Clinton Charisma, Little Farmer John. If you'd like an opportunity to get these cards, contact me now. You can get them for only $49.99. Contact me at Steve Bowtie Bryant at iCloud.com. Get your set now while supplies last.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling. I'm Dean Hill, see you at ringside.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome one more time to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling, and I'm your host, Jimmy Street, and this is my brother from the same father and mother, the Plastic Sheik, Jared Street. What's up, brother? How you doing today?
I'm doing great, brother. How about yourself?
Hanging in there, man. Just, looking forward to getting a conversation in with Jeff The Crippler Daniels. I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, man, it's going to be good to talk to him. The guy's been everywhere. I mean, people are probably going to say, if they look him up on YouTube or something like that, they're probably going to say, hey, man, I've seen that guy before.
Right. I've seen him somewhere. I know that guy from somewhere. Yeah. Jeff is a great guy. I got to know him in the Nashville scene, like most of the people that we interview on here. And I tell you, he was just one of those guys that you gravitate towards. It was just like, oh man, I want to hear what this guy's talking about, and, he's a longtime veteran that knows his stuff and doesn't mind to talk to the younger guys and share it with them, and for that, that's why, honestly, he's a treasure for that scene, especially the Middle Tennessee, but also just the whole, he's a treasure. So it's good to have Jeff on. Jeff's just one of those guys that you could literally talk to about a million things. So I think I've got some good questions. I know you've got some good questions for him. I'm excited to see how that goes. So.
Me too, brother.
Yeah, so to kind of do a little backtracking before we get to Jeff, the first thing to address, I guess, right now is that the last episode we had was the action figure episode, seeing a lot of, good listens and numbers and stuff, so we're happy about that. Definitely appreciate that. Also some fun feedback. And yes, Charlie, the announcer of the Muscle Men, looked just like Rick Boucher, so we got to... We got to prove that on our Facebook page, so that was hilarious. And yeah, so we, have been having fun with that episode. So,
do you think that was supposed to be like Mean Gene-esque, or do you think it looked like one of the Japanese announcers or something like that?
I think it's got to be one of the Japanese announcers, in my personal opinion. Yeah, so. Because he kind of does have that like Japanese, almost stereotypical look about him a little bit. But
yeah,
I'm
you're
telling you,
right.
I think it looks like Rick Boucher to me.
Yeah.
But y'all go look up Rick Boucher if you don't know who that is. But anyway, he was a longtime congressman, House of Representatives, whatever, from the state of Virginia in a 9th district. So,
and some people might say it Boucher, but
no, it's
here. I know, but
yeah, Boucher. I like that. Rick Boucher.
Yeah, but that's how it's spelled. I think like in some Cajun type. That name would be
that's
Boucher,
Ricky
like
Boucher.
French Canadian type thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's old Ricky Boucher. Anyway, Rick Boucher, longtime guy there. So anyway, we had a good time with the action figures. So what's cool is the action figure shows kind of bring in a different audience, you know? And so we've kind of become a liaison of sorts. One of our new sponsors on the show is Insane Shane's World. He's got a Facebook page. He actually makes custom action figures of these guys that we're talking about. And they're not your normal custom. They're not like, you know, take a Cena head and a Triple H torso and, you know, whatever legs and that kind of thing. This guy, he has something that, like, basically, I guess, like a 3D printer, and he prints these guys up. I know he's done Troy Eaton. I know he's done Reno Riggins is the one that's dropping soon. But go to Insane Shane's World on Facebook. Look him up. He's got an ad now on our show, and we're running that with him because, you know what? You know, we've got the Plastic Sheik. I don't know. Maybe we might see a Plastic Sheik action figure one day. We'll see. You know, things happen, right? So
the sky's the limit, brother.
The sky is the limit. You have anything you'd like to share before we get going to Jeff here?
Just thinking about some things, you know, they got I saw that CM Punk is possibly getting healthy again. So just something to keep our eyes on if he actually appears in wrestling again anywhere.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. Seth Rollins kind of opened the door for something there, but
he did.
That could just be, you know, the thing is people, we forget that wrestlers are workers, you know?
That's true. That's true.
And they could just be working us. And that's the thing. And once it's kind of a curse. Once you are or see enough of the wrestling business and you kind of get a little smart to it, you start to see everything as a work. We've talked about this before, but, you know, like NFL, it's a work, you know?
Well, there's supposedly a prediction out there for the Super Bowl that we'll see if it's true as of recording this. But.
That The Rock is going to show up or something?
Yeah.
CM Punk's going to get in there.
No, supposedly the score is going to be 37-34 Eagles. That's supposedly a script from the NFL, they've said. I don't know.
Well, that's a good one, Sheik. Who do you think will be the winner of the Super Bowl?
I'm going to say Chiefs. I don't know why.
Chiefs? You like Patrick? Yeah.
I just think that they always seem to make the plays when they need to. Eagles quarterback's a little banged up or has been, Jalen Hurts, so I don't know if
him Hurts.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure he's going to play unless they tell him he can't play, so it's
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll see, but I'll go with the Chiefs too. So I was feeling the Chiefs, but I just feel like Patrick's one of the top echelon, and they've got a great team around him. So we'll see. You know, Chiefs and Eagles, why not? So by this time, it'll have already happened, and, you know, it'll be almost out of their minds now. So, except for the team who wins. So, congratulations to whoever wins.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I think that's it for the opening right now. I want to just get to Jeff. Let me get him on the line here. You guys hang out with us just for a second. We're going to listen to a few messages, and we'll be right back with some Jeff the Crippler Daniels.
Hey guys, this is Wolfie D from PG-13. Check out my podcast, Live and in Color with Wolfie D, every Monday at noon. We're talking Memphis, we're talking ECW, WCW, WWF, everywhere that I've been. We even have some great guests, some Hall of Famers on the show with us. Every Monday, Live and in Color with Wolfie D.
Hey everyone, this is Shane from Insane Shane's World. I release wrestling figures of enhancement talent, mid-card wrestlers, and wrestlers that you never thought would have a figure available. So if you're interested in adding a really cool and rare figure to your collection, then don't hesitate to contact me at shamtheman73@gmail.com. That's SHAMtheman73@gmail.com. You can also join my Facebook group. Just search Insane Shane's World.
All right, we are back with the Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling podcast. And y'all, today we've got a very special guest on the show. I tell you, we have topics, we have what ifs, we have cool things, but when we get a cool guest on the show, that's when I really feel like we're at our peak right now. And this guy right here is a absolute legend when it comes down to it. He's done a little bit of everything and lived to tell about it. So welcome to the Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling podcast, Mr. Jeff The Crippler Daniels. How you doing, brother?
I am good, brother. Good. Thank you guys for having me on. I appreciate it.
We're happy to have you on. Excited to have you on. It's funny because I never clicked with you on Facebook for some reason because you're under your shoot name. And I'm like, man, I know this guy. Why do I? And we finally got together, man, and friended each other or whatever you call it. And then, dude, you're on the podcast. I'm excited, man. So
yeah, I shut my wrestling one down 3 or 4 years ago. It was a hassle, and I wasn't viable anymore. I was retired, and it was just a bunch of bull on there all the time, and I got tired messing with it, so I just shut it down.
Yeah, I understand, man. I don't blame you. What's funny is I was in the business for a little bit and a bunch of people friended me and all this stuff. And then I get out of the business and then all those friends kind of go away. And then I get on a podcast about wrestling again with Wolfie and my brother here. And boom, boom, boom. Everybody and their mother's trying to friend me on here. So I actually sent out the friendship to you. So I'm not putting you in that realm.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah. It's amazing. You get viable again and they come out of the woodwork, don't they?
Yeah, that's a good way to say it, actually.
Hey, Jeff. So, one of the first things I always like to ask to kind of start us off, and it kind of lets the audience know kind of where you come from in the wrestling business is if you could have a Mount Rushmore of your all-time favorite or just the all-time wrestlers to you that could be impacted your life, your favorite, or just people you like to watch, or it could just be your opinion of who's the best. And you could even have a fifth one, 4 to 5 of your top wrestlers of all time.
So just after being in the business, or just like growing up, who I thought, or just in general?
All of it, man. All of it.
Any or all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big influence on my career, made me want to be a professional wrestler was, believe it or not, Ken Mantell, when he was a world junior heavyweight champion.
Yes.
Awesome. Ted DiBiase's got to go in there. Ted's one of the best workers that was ever in this business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ricky Morton.
Oh, yeah.
Good, true, close friend of mine. I love Ricky to death, but he is this business personified.
Yes, he is.
And then, just because I love him, superstar Billy Graham.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Man, that's a great Mount Rushmore.
And unfortunately, Billy Graham gets overlooked a lot with when it comes to the all-time greats, just because he was a little bit early for a lot of people. He was just a little bit early for a lot of people.
He was way before his time, but he changed the landscape of professional wrestling. He is what Vince turned Hulk Hogan into.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
He had him there already. And, the deal with Backlund taking that belt, and instead of making a babyface turn with Graham, which would have got over because the people had begun to love him anyway.
Yeah.
That was missed opportunity right there. He should have been Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, it's so true.
Instead of Hulk Hogan copying him.
Yeah, do you think maybe he was too strong-minded for Vince, and that's maybe why Vince? No. Yeah.
No, it was old school mentality. They told him the day he won the belt, the day he would lose the belt, they were grooming Bob Backlund because they were tired of having an ethnic champion, because they had Bruno with the Italians, they had Pedro with the Puerto Ricans, and and Vince Sr. always wanted a red-headed All-American champion.
Yeah. Okay.
But, Graham was selling out and doing big business, but Vince Sr. was a man of his word. Everybody I've ever talked to that said anything, he said you could take his word to the bank. And, to the day he took that belt off Graham.
No.
Wow.
That's crazy to think about because Billy Graham was so special to not only other wrestlers like Dusty Rhodes and Hulk Hogan and Scott Steiner and so many guys, but when it came down to it, even boxers were taking some stuff from the superstar. So
Yeah, and even like Jesse Ventura.
Graham said he took stuff from Muhammad Ali too, you know.
Well, I mean, it's probably a give and a take. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's the one that started it all. You know, Dusty patterned his promos after him. The brother thing, Hogan with brother this and brother that, you know, that was superstar Billy Graham.
Brother.
You know,
yeah.
Look back on some old Georgia Championship wrestling. There's one where Graham comes in, he cuts his promo on Ric Flair going to wrestle him for the world title. Man, it is superstar Billy Graham personified.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we'll bring you back for the Superstar Billy Graham show, but today we're going to talk Jeff Crippler Daniels. How you feel about that, brother?
Hey, I'm excited. Let's go.
All right. So I always start this off, man, and it kind of goes back a little further than a lot of podcasts go. Talk about your younger days, man. Where'd you grow up? Where are you from, brother?
Well, I was born in Houston, Texas, grew up in Louisiana, just across the state line from Texas in a town called DeRidder, which is about 40 minutes north of Lake Charles. So as you all know, Jeff The Crippler Daniels from Lake Charles, Louisiana. So
yeah, buddy.
That's where that came from. You know, I played football, baseball, we didn't have, believe it or not, amateur wrestling.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what did you play in football? What was your position?
Linebacker on defense or nose guard, depending on which defense we were running. And I played fullback or strong back position on offense.
Nice. All right, what about baseball? What'd you play in baseball?
I was first baseman. I'm left-handed.
Okay, that sets you up. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Oh, a lefty too, a southpaw, huh? Gotcha.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Who'd you like? Were you a Stros fan growing up?
My dad was a huge Oakland A's fan.
Yeah, okay.
And the Oakland A's played the St. Louis Cardinals in a World Series when I was just a little kid. And I saw those St. Louis Cardinals jerseys, and I've been a Cardinals fan ever since.
Yeah, okay. Well, we won't tell you who we like, but we'll just it ain't the Cubs. We'll say that. It's maybe another team y'all beat up on in the Central, the Reds. So.
Yeah, well.
It can't be perfect, can we?
I'm a Bengals fan because of Joe Burrow. You know, I'm an LSU guy.
You Bayou Bengals, yeah. I figured you would be, yeah.
And Jamar Chase.
Yeah. So I know we're talking sports here, and I don't want to kind of go too far with that, but I don't want to cut you off either. But at what point did pro wrestling come in around that time?
Well, I mean, you know, from the time I was a kid, my grandfather was a huge wrestling fan. You know, I grew up watching Leroy McGurk's wrestling.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and then later Bill Watts took over and it became Mid-South. But, that's what I grew up on. And then I had family in Houston. I'd go there and I'd get to see Paul Bosch's wrestling, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So, that's what I grew up on. And when I got out of school, I moved to Houston. I was working in Houston. And I used to go down to 1919 Caroline.
Yeah.
It was the wrestling office, Paul Bosch. And every Friday I'd go down there, Miss Bosch, I want to be a professional wrestler. Oh, kid, you don't want to do this. You're going to starve to death. You know, you're not big enough, blah, blah, blah. And I did it every Friday, man.
Yeah.
He said, well, if Nick Kozak comes around, I'll ask him if he's interested. Or if Tiger Conway comes around, I'll ask him if he's interested. And I kept doing it. And after about a year, I walked in there one Friday, and he said, you are not going to give up, are you? I said, no, sir. I want to be a wrestler. And he said, come back here. It's the first time I ever got to go back into the office part.
Yeah.
Man, he had pictures of everybody on that wall that had been to Houston, And he took the phone. He called San Antonio. He called Joe Blanchard. And he said, Joe, I got a kid here. He's very persistent. He said, I'm going to send him to you, and I want you to take care of him.
Okay.
Which I learned later, I want you to take care of him meant don't take his money and break his leg and send him home.
Right.
So I went down to San Antonio, and Eric Embry was the trainer, but Eric was leaving, going to Dallas, and I ended up Bruiser Bob Sweetan trained me.
Okay.
And Jonathan Boyd had a little bit to do with it too.
Yeah. What year was this?
Sheepherder had just left. This was 85.
Yeah.
Early 85, late 84, early 85.
Okay, awesome. And you said the sheep herders, I've had Luke on podcast before, and great guy. The funny thing is we talked too much about the bushwhackers, and all I wanted to do was talk about the sheep herders. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because Luke was the booker there.
Yeah.
And, Joe had took the book back over, and, I was training with like Mannyville Lobos and some of those guys. Rudy Gonzalez was in there. Dusty Wolf.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And then your top guys, you had Scott Casey. Of course, Tully would come in. Sweetan. The Stomper was in and out. The Spoiler. Al Madrid.
Yeah.
He had everybody. Al Madrid.
He did. That's amazing.
Al Perez. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever talk to Gary Hart at all?
Gary wasn't in there. Gary was in Dallas at that time.
Got it.
That's all the boys were going up there because Joe was about to shut down. He was about to sell out to Fred Barron for that Texas All-Star deal.
Right. Okay.
I got in, I got started, and then Joe did his deal, took his money from Byrd up there, sold to Fred Barron, and Fred kept a few of the top guys, but he cleared house, man. So here I am just getting started, and now I don't have a job.
Floor falls out from under you. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm trying to get into Dallas at this point, and, they bring me up and they do a thing or two with me, nothing big, just undercard, doing some TV, show up on a house show.
Yeah.
Funny, later on, I came back, and, I left there because I wasn't doing anything, and I went out to California and was working for California Championship Wrestling. It was Victor Rivera, Steve Strong. It was after the Olympic stuff. All that was dead and gone at that point.
Right.
But man, I was starving to death out there. I tried to get on up to San Francisco, couldn't get anything there. Ended up, got a little break. Buddy of mine, Gorgeous Joey Jackson.
Okay.
Was up in Portland. So I got a little spot up there. I was there for a minute, and I was just like, man, it's too damn cold up here. So I came back home and, I'll try to figure out what I can do. Well, I got back to Louisiana, and a buddy of mine said, man, they're starting a new promotion here in Louisiana. I was like, really? So he introduced me to the guy, and it was Edward Falk and Jim Carpenter with that IWF, the International Wrestling Federation.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So, well, actually, at the time, it was Jim Carpenter had it. Then I knew Edward Falk from refereeing, and I got Edward into it. Edward, just basically muscled right in on Jim and took over. And so I thought, well, I'm in a great position, which I was. I worked on top there for a couple of years, and I had a who's who of guys to work with. We'd bring in one-man gang, all the Mid-South guys. We'd bring in me and a guy, Amos Moses.
Oh, yeah, okay.
John DeLotte.
Yeah.
But me and Amos, Jack Curtis put us together as the new Rock and Roll Express. Going to try to, play off that in Louisiana. So, and then they brought in like Iceman and Brickhouse Brown, the Blackbirds to work us. We worked them. We worked the Rock and Roll RPMs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I got crossways with Edward because he owed me a bunch of money. And so Mike Davis sent me over to Continental, which had just died because everything was dying then,
Yeah, man, the territory's drying up. Yeah.
I think her name was Cheryl Dunn was running it at that point. And I worked over there for a month or so. I was like, nah. Tommy Pritchard, which I knew from Houston, Tommy said, man, don't leave. It's going to get better. And I was like, nah, I'm going back to Louisiana, man.
Right.
So I went back, and then I got picked up with World Class. And believe it or not, it's a funny story. Great Muda. It was his first trip to the States, and he was doing the Super Black Ninja gimmick.
Right. Yes.
And the guy he was working, Muda would give him that spin kick, and he kept bumping out of the ring to the floor. And Akbar hated that. Akbar said, if that son of a bitch falls out of the ring one more time, you got your gear with you? I said, yes, sir, I do. He said, well, the spot's yours.
Yeah.
And sure enough, that night, Blackham Coliseum in Lafayette, he bumped out of the ring, and they sent him home, and I picked up working the rest of that tour with Muda as the Super Black Ninja.
Wow. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
How was that, man? I mean, because you're kind of getting some seasoning on you.
He was green, and he was stiff. I jobbed to him in WCW years later, and he was the easiest, smoothest guy in the whole world.
Wow. So, okay, you've been telling a great story, so I'm not messing up your flow, but talk about what was your very first match and who was it against?
Bob Sweetan.
Bob Sweetan. And how did that go? How did you feel?
We did about 10 minutes, and of course he pile drived me and beat me.
Yeah.
Since he was breaking me in, they kind of married me to him, and we worked our way up to mid card before he broke off and went into something big again.
Yeah.
But I mean, he carried me around, took care of me, broke me in, got me used to crowds, and, steady talking to me. Look, here's how you do this. Here's how you do this. This is what we're going to do now, and then riding in the car, I would drive him, and it just him and all those guys down there were just a wealth of knowledge, and anybody willing to learn back then, if you would shut up and listen, they would teach you everything that you needed to know.
Yeah.
And
that's really still
good.
True,
Yeah. And I will tell you, first time I ever got color was Hard Way by Sweetan. we were working mid-card, and he had me in a headlock. We were down, and he said, boy, the crowd's flat, kid. He said, we got to get them up. We're building to the main event. He said, maybe we'll get a little color. I said, well, I don't have a blade, Bob. He said, you don't need one.
Oh, man.
He backed me in the corner. He backed me in the corner and popped me over my left eye.
Yeah.
And, he said, did that hurt? I said, no. He said, I still got the touch. And by the time blood was just all over me, man. I thought, wow. No knot, no nothing. He just popped right down over that oracle bone and split me wide open.
Yeah.
With a bunch of tape in the back to tape it up. And then, of course, from then on, the next 2 or 3 nights, you just bump it and I'm bleeding again.
Yeah.
That's the Sweetan hard-weighed me my first time.
Honestly, that was the first time I ever got color, was a hard way too, but this is not my show. So, so Sweetan, so when you're working him, it's like you're learning on the job, right? So who would you say was the next person to kind of take you on as your teacher, essentially?
I bounced around at that point. Akbar had a lot. Akbar liked me a lot. So,
love Akbar. Yeah. He was one of my biggest influences. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He used to beg me to move back to Dallas. Please come back to Dallas. I said, man, I'm in Nashville. I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I need you so bad down here, kid. You just don't understand.
Yeah.
And anytime I wanted to go that way, I picked up the phone and I was booked as long as I wanted to be booked over that way, which was really good. I got some good stuff in Global. I worked with Calvin Knapp, stuff like that. But as far as in the ring, when I was with IWF, I'd made that little trip out west, and it was just kind of on my own. And, those guys were cliquey out there.
Sure.
So everybody kind of stayed to themselves. You worked who you worked, and that's what it was. But I got back into IWF for Louisiana with them. And before me and Amos tagged up, Jerry Stubbs came in.
Okay.
And, Jerry took a liking to me, kind of took me under his wing. We even tagged together and had the IWF tag belt, which was the first title I ever held.
Yeah.
But, and Jerry was like, look, here's what you do, and you don't let nobody tell you this, and don't let nobody tell you that. You're your own man, and you make your own money, and if you don't like what they're doing, you make a call and move down the road. Don't sit somewhere and be unhappy. Just smarting me up to the business end, and also polishing me up as a worker too. He is phenomenal. Jerry Stubbs is one of the most underrated wrestlers in the world.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I know that wrestling is not just a one-time, the light bulb goes off and everything, but do you remember when the first light bulb went off in your mind and you were like, okay, I started to get something there. I'm getting it now. Do you remember that time?
Yeah. Well, doing that stuff with Stubbs, it was serious learning tree.
Sure.
But after that, when me and Amos were together and Brickhouse and Iceman came in, you know, and Ice told me flat out, if you kids can't work, we're going to eat your ass alive. And we went out there and tore the house down with me, like, brother, I'll work with you anywhere. And he would get us bookings, you know, out of there to go work them. And of course, then Brick, who was always in trouble, bless his heart. Yeah. You know, and then he brought in that kid from Dallas, Mr. Ebony, and that, you know, they did that for a while. But working with him, I really started to understand psychology, you know, and how to sell, when to sell, how much to sell, you know. But when I think when the light really came on for me was when I finally turned heel, because I'd worked so long as a babyface. I knew what that babyface needed. I knew what I needed to do to get that babyface over to make me viable. Good heel, if you're going to get heat, you got to give that babyface 90% of everything. Yeah. And knowing when, how. But I would say probably around 90 when I came up here for Jarrett. I came up here for Jerry Jarrett and worked here a few months, and, you know, they switched bookers back to Lawler, so it's a good cop, bad cop thing, you know. Either Jarrett's the booker and you work, and then Lawler takes over and you're gone, or vice versa. So at that time, Tom Pritchard and Ricky Morton, Dirty White Boy, they were all like, hey, brother, just come to Smoky Mountain. We'll get you in down here. So I went to Smoky Mountain, and me and Chris Michael.
Yeah. It's the first time I ever saw you wrestle, Jeff. It was in Smoky Mountain. So
me and Chris went down there and tore the house down, and both got jobs. I mean, we tore it up. We did we had this 15-minute match worked out, and Cornette says, sounds great, guys. Can you do it in 6? Yes, sir. So it was a 6-minute high spot, man. I mean, we never stopped moving, except I bumped out of the ring one time, and the only reason I did that was so he could do a plancha over the top on me, you know. And, of course, you had Bob Cottle and Dutch Mantell doing commentaries, so they made us sound like $1 million.
And Chris Michaels was old Chris Comet around that time, I do believe, correct?
Chris Comet, yep. Yeah. Me and him had been working here around Nashville doing the independent stuff. See, when I finished up with Jared, I was like, well, shit, I don't know what I'm going to do, you know. And somebody says, well, you need to call Chris Champion. So I called Chris, and Chris like, oh, brother, I could use you. You know, I'm booking here, I'm booking there, I'm booking here. I can work you 4 or 5 nights a week. I was like, hell yeah. Yeah. So, you know, and that's where I started meeting the guys around here. Ashley Hudson had just come over from Australia, was green kid, you know. Yeah. Chris was just breaking in. There was a ton of guys, man. Yeah. And, you know, me and Chris hung together and booked stuff forever. And when I got the booking job for NWA, I brought Chris in as my assistant because just me and him flowed well together with our thoughts and stuff. But I would say probably 91's when the light bulb came on for me. You know, really felt at home and felt like I was a journeyman starting to turn into a general.
Yeah. Because, you know, right about this time, you're starting to really do some stuff as far as doing, you know, not only being a general in the local areas, but also you're starting to become a carpenter too. I mean, you were a carpenter. I'm saying that in the wrong way.
Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely. And proud to be a carpenter. That's a hell of a job to have, and it always keeps you working.
Absolutely.
I was going to ask you, Jeff, I doing a little research about you. I saw that you started some with WWF in, is it August of 92 or something like that? Is that right?
Yeah. Downtown Bruno, who had got me in up here, he was down there in IWF with the RPMs. When I was ready to leave Louisiana, he said, well, man, it was me and Big Jim Ryder. I don't know if you guys knew him. He looked just like One Man Gang. But me and him, Bruno said, look, y'all come up. I'm going to introduce you to Lawler. I said, all right. So we drove up to Memphis. We left the show in Belle Chase, Louisiana on a Saturday night, drove to Memphis, went to Mid-South Coliseum. On Sunday, we went out and watched Jerry Lawler play softball and met him. And Monday, we went to the Coliseum, and Jerry said, yeah, I'm always looking for some new guys. He said, can you be here for TV Saturday? I'm like, well, shit, that's a week away. He said, yeah, we can be here. So we drove back to Louisiana, got our crap together, come up here for TV. I got a job, but Jim didn't. He told him, big guys are a dime a dozen up here. I can get big guys all day long. Yeah. But he kept me in Dominique. Yeah. So, you know, from then on, just me and her worked together forever.
That was a go.
WWF stuff. Bruno got me in up there because he had just went up. And I remember my first night in was the Von Braun Center in Huntsville. And
wow.
It was building up to Kamala
and
Undertaker in the coffin match. Survivor Series, SummerSlam.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Can't remember which. But I had the last TV match with Kamala before the pay-per-view.
Okay.
And, I knew Jim from down in Louisiana because, all the Louisiana guys know all the Louisiana guys. Cassidy O'Reilly, Cassidy Riley. I kept him booked up here.
Yeah.
A bunch of the boys, Kevin Northcutt, all them guys. We, anytime they were coming through, I had a booking for them because, we all stuck together.
Right. We love Cassidy on this show for sure.
Oh, yeah.
So I love Cass, man. He's one of my favorite people in the whole world.
Great dude.
And yes, he is. And so I go out there with Kamala. That's when he was doing the deal where he would, pin you on your stomach, and they're trying to tell him roll him over, that whole deal.
Yeah.
So I did this deal where when he gave me the splash in the middle of my back, when he hit me, I threw both arms up and let my eyes roll back in my head, and just flop dead.
Yeah.
And, they rolled me over finally and pinned me. When I walked through the curtain at the gorilla position, Vince McMahon himself was standing there, and he said, guys, that's how I want Kamala sold. So I picked up a bunch of people working that.
Yeah.
But I worked Papa Shango the next night in Nashville, which was a cakewalk. He said, hey, we can work or we can work the gimmick. I said, what do you want to do? He said, I want to put you in a trance and pin you without us taking a bump. I said, I'm your Huckleberry. Hey.
Yeah.
I did that little run with WWF, and then I picked up some stuff with WCW, and I got in down there when Bill Watts was in. I got back in. So, I did TVs off and on down there.
Yeah. Because then you're working Barbarian, Tony Atlas. Then you're working Tex and Shanghai. I mean, you're working all that stuff, man. So
yeah, Tex Slazenger and them. That's Ron Slinker's kid.
Yeah. Okay.
Florida.
Yeah. Tex, he's a chef now, I'm pretty sure. And he's like a 5-star chef somewhere. And then we talked to Shanghai, which is, Henry Godwin. And he's, he's still big, raw bone son of a gun, and great guys, both of them, So.
Yeah. Is he cooking down in Florida? Is he back in Florida?
I think so. Yeah. I think that's where Dennis is. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So, but Barbarian, man. I mean, that's as big as a guy you can get. I mean, I know Papa Shango is a big old boy, but
Barbie was easy because me and Joey Maggs were friends, which was, Manny Fernandez had him under his wing. So, and Manny and Barbie were great friends. So, of course, I got to hang around those guys. Me and Joey did, drive them up and down the road. So, he was easy. Now, if he didn't like you, he'd kill you. him and me both. But if he liked you, he was easy as a feather. And Tony had just come back. He was working in those army pants. He'd been painting houses.
Yeah.
And I worked him in a single match also, Tony.
Yeah. I watched that match earlier.
Yeah, he was like, they said, go home. He said, we can, I said, Tony, shoot me. Give me go for clothesline. I'll duck it. When I come back, grab both hands full of my hair. I'll lay out for a big bump. When I pop right back up, hit me with that full Nelson. He said, yeah, brother, that sounds good. And that's what we did for the finish. He couldn't think of a finish. I thought of it on the fly right there. So.
Yeah.
Of course, I didn't get credit for it. They told him how great he looked.
Yeah. So in the ring with Kamala, and I don't want to dial too far back here, but are you talking to Kamala before the match and he's keeping the gimmick in the match, or is he talking to you a little bit?
No, I got dressed in the same dressing room with him. Him and Bruno and Brawler and all those guys. And, he's just like, we just go out there and do a little series of Roebuck, brother. You know the thing. I said, yeah, I know the thing. You're going to chop me up. I'm going to try to drop kick you. You're not going to sell it. I'm going to come up. You're going to chop me to death and give me a splash. He said, that's pretty much what we going to do, Jeffrey.
That's what we going to do, Jeffrey. Yeah, Kamala's great. Yeah, so you're working Kamala, Papa, Barbarian. I know this is kind of a quintessential list here, but in that time, though, you're also doing the USWA Smoky Mountain thing. Now, you kind of alluded to it earlier where, Jarrett would take the book and then you would have a spot, or Lawler. They were that way, right? They would literally clear the house sometimes just to start a whole new.
Would.
So they would do a blow off on their feuds, and then it was start over time, and then Lawler took the book for 6 months.
Yeah,
Tell me,
right.
And so that's what led you to Smoky Mountain?
Yeah, I mean, they cleaned house. All the under talent gets cleaned out. They bring in new guys. They keep a handful of guys that are always in and out of there. Of course, Jeff and Jerry are there, and the Moondogs are always there anytime they want to be there. Billy Travis is in and out between there and Dallas all the time.
Yeah.
Eric Embry had his wreck and was out. So,
Talk about my favorite, Tony Falk.
Tony Falk. I love Tony, man. Me and Tony have been friends forever.
Yeah.
Met him in Dallas. He was refereeing at that point in Dallas.
Yeah.
And I was in there for a cup of coffee, and, they didn't really have a spot for me because all the top San Antonio guys were coming up there. That's where I first met Eric, too, because Eric left there right after I started training. And then I a little bit with him in Dallas, a little bit more with Global, and then, up here in USWA. And it's funny because Jarrett was taking over the book. I worked Eric Tuesday night at the Louisville Gardens, and he went back and he told Jerry, he said, Laura, don't get rid of this kid. He said, man, he can work his ass off.
Yeah.
Laura said, no, I'm getting rid of him.
Yeah.
And he did.
Yeah.
But then you go full circle, the last couple of years that I was still working, anytime Laura was working independents around here, he didn't want to work anybody but me. So
he asked for you. Yeah. So it's like you stuck around long enough for him to validate, okay, now I can work with him,
Yeah. Well, he always loved working with Dominique too, man.
Sure.
He's like, I remember when he says, she wearing flats or she got heels? I said, she got heels.
Yeah.
He said, get her to give you one of them boots and dig that heel in my eye. I said, all right, you got it. So we played with the boot for 15 minutes before he pile drove me.
Yeah. I got to manage Dutch against Lawler, and he is great. Dutch iggy'd me 33 times, I think, which is hilarious because that was a total rib. But what's funny is early on when I was out there and you and Dominique were working, people would say, sit at the curtain and watch Dominique. You just watch her. You're going to learn a lot from her. Just watch her. And I did. It was great stuff. She knew timing really well. Of course, y'all were such a well-oiled machine. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely, man.
You know
where she learned?
Akbar. Yeah.
Akbar. I loved her, man. He'd bring her in to wrestle. We'd always take some girl with us, and he'd put her over big. I'd go in and do a job for somebody, and he'd put her over big.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
Jimmy was mentioning something there a while ago that made me think of something. It's always nice to hear. You always hear about wrestlers being ribbers and everything like that. Who's like the best ribber, or what's the best rib you can tell us about, or something like that? Real memorable to you.
Cow, man. Yeah, I got a couple of them, but they're pretty bad. I better not tell the Jimmy Garvin one.
Whatever you want to tell, brother.
Yeah, whatever you want to tell.
Man. No. There's enough guys. You'll get that story out of somebody. I would say best ribber. Golly, man, it's so hard.
Yeah.
Tracy Smothers is a pretty good ribber.
Yeah.
Tom Pritchard's a pretty good ribber. Dirty White Boy.
Yeah.
Ricky and Robert, you can't ever count them out. Robert Fuller. Robert's a pretty good one.
Yeah. Is there anyone you can say that won't hurt the innocent?
They were all just like simple ribs, lock somebody's suitcase and, they don't have a key to get in it, or,
sure,
stuff like that. Siphon all the gas out of your car, little stuff like that.
I've heard the one where, you go to wrestle your match, you come back and one of your shoes is missing, but then 2 towns later in the loop, you find your shoe again. So you had to go home in your wrestling boots or something and, your shoe would show up. But
yeah. First thing you do when you get to the building is put your boots on.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, one of them will be missing.
Right. And also that's probably how much time of your life have you spent tying up your boots, man?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's
the old Congress Inn.
Oh, legendary. Yeah.
Yeah, when we were all everybody was staying there, right? So
yeah,
Billy Travis had a place to stay, so he always gave me and Dominique his room over there. He said, "Hey, go stay at the Congress." He said, "It's paid for." I'm not staying there tonight because, of course, him and Jeff were running around together doing what him and Jeff did. So, and I remember there was this kid, Sean Baxter. I don't know if y'all remember him or not. Was it Sean Baxter? No, it wasn't Sean Baxter.
Brandon Baxter, was it?
Yeah, but it wasn't him.
Okay.
God, he did a rock and roller gimmick.
Okay.
But anyway, Eric Embry and and Terry Adonis. Do you know Terry Adonis?
Yes, I do.
Cowboy
definitely.
Con?
Yeah.
Well, they H-bombed him.
Oh, man.
He was talking shit, blah, 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 blah. He was talking shit. So Terry said, we'll get this kid. So they H-bombed him, handcuffed him to the fence around the swimming pool, poked him in the ass with a hairbrush.
Oh,
left him buck naked, and Terry wrote on his chest, "Thanks for a good time, Terry."
Oh my gosh!
Oh my god!
Yeah. Needless to say, he left the territory and never came back.
That's a pretty brutal rib right there, man. That's pretty stiff. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that's still not as good as the Jimmy Garvin, but I can't.
Right.
I love Jimmy, still alive, and I'm not going to do that to him.
I understand. Well, isn't it true that you could have been a Garvin brother?
Yeah. But see, now there you go. Jimmy Garvin loved me to death.
Yeah.
So when I turned heel, Akbar said, "Hey, look how much success that Jimmy's had working with Precious."
Yeah.
I said, yeah. It's great. He said, "Look, Dominique, Leslie, it's my wife."
Uh-huh.
He said, "Leslie is beautiful." He said, "Why don't you do something with her?" I said, "Well, she don't know anything about the business." He said, "She don't need to know anything about the business. Let her be stiff. She's on the floor. If she ain't kicking the shit out of them guys, then ain't nobody gonna believe it." I said, "Well, you're right." So he said, let me talk to her. So that's how she got started. But yeah, Jimmy told me, he said, "Man," he said, "brother, but we can do some stuff together." He said, "Just why don't you be a Garvin?" I said, "Oh, I want to make it on my own and blah, blah, blah." And I look back at that now and go, "You stupid idiot." What the hell was I thinking?
Yeah. I can't blame you, bro.
He offered to give me the rub, and I was too stupid to know what he was doing.
Yeah. So you bring up a great point, having your wife in the business. I mean, when I signed up for the business, that was on the list of don'ts. You know what I mean? How did you all, that took some balls, man, because I've heard a lot of guys say, don't ever bring your girl around, but of course you all were a team. That's one thing. Whereas she wasn't necessarily staying in the back a lot by herself, And,
I was single for a long time before me and her got married. So, I had my run up and down the road back in the territory days doing my thing. So,
right.
Me and her married. We're trying to raise a family. I got kids. And, believe me, the last thing on my mind when I was out there was chasing arena rats or doing something I wasn't supposed to be doing. I was busy trying to make sure that I didn't get stiffed on my pay.
Right.
So I got grocery money to bring home.
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, look, you do this, you get double the pay."
Yeah.
Okay. Smart.
That's a great idea.
History. Yeah. We broke her in, and, it took her a little while. It took her about a year or so to really get good. and I'd throw those guys outside the ring, man, and she would walk a mud hole in their ass. They'd come back and be like, God, brother, she is so stiff. I said, man, that's a girl. If you can't take that, you don't need to be here. And I said that my whole career. Every time she'd walk somebody's ass up and down, that's a girl, man. If you can't take that, come on.
That's a girl, man. So
but she was stiff, man.
yeah. I mean, so, also during that same time, I mean, in 92, I'm looking at this list of the guys and the people you worked with in Smoky Mountain, rock and roll, Tracy Smothers, Kevin Sullivan, Stud Stable, the Armstrongs. I mean, you worked so many great people in that time.
Oh, yeah.
And I know you said Kamala and Papa Shango and Barbarian and Tony Atlas, but these are dudes on a different level than those guys. No disrespect.
Kevin Sullivan. I did a deal with Kevin Sullivan. Got color for him. Got 14 stitches in the top of my head because I raised up when he came with a chair. And it was one of those wooden chairs, and it caught me right on the crease, man. And it laid me wide open. He was like, holy shit, brother. Yeah, sorry. No, he said, no, it's good. So he hung me in a tree of woes, and I had a big puddle of blood on the mat when I was done. So at the end of it, Bob Armstrong says, man, look, I'm going to bring you out here on TV. Don't clean that up real good.
Seriously.
Pitch the whole deal that Sullivan needs to be banned. He needs to have his license taken. He can't wrestle, blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, he was doing the deal with Brian Lee.
Right.
And Brian says, well, I'll never get my revenge if you get rid of him, blah, blah, blah. So that's, But
I love that time of wrestling, man. I did. I love that time. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, see, Kevin would, I was there the night that, the Japanese guy, what was his name? Golly, man, he's a big time Japanese guy now. The guy that gapped his arm wide open and Sullivan stuck the deal in it.
Yeah.
What is his name? Jeez.
Kinemura. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Koichiro Kimura. Yeah.
That was him. Yeah, man. He laid. You could see almost to the bone of his bicep. And even Sullivan was like, "Oh my God, this is bad," but I'm gonna stick this thing in it. And, we went out there to try to break all that up. I was taking bumps and all that for Sullivan, and he's still on him, and they're bleeding everywhere. And what sucked is I never got to work with Dominique there because Candido was in there with
Sonny,
with
Tammy.
Tammy.
Yeah.
But she never got to do any Smoky Mountain with me, which sucked. We worked together everywhere else, so.
Yeah, that doesn't. I mean, I get and maybe was that Cornette's call? Was that he just like, brother, can't bring it in? We already got that.
No, I think it's because I wouldn't bobble. I was in a carpenter position,
Sure.
Well, that night with Kinemura, I worked the Rock and Roll Express, and that's when they had Arn Anderson under the sheet.
Yeah,
they were poking the bear.
Right.
We worked rock and roll that night.
Yeah.
That was, I was a wealth of knowledge working with all those guys and riding up and down the road. I'd be in a band with White Boy and Tom Pritchard and Ricky Morton and, Tim Horner, all those guys.
Yeah. Did you ever hear Tim Horner's version of Shameless?
No,
the Garth Brooks classic.
No, but I did see Tracy Smothers whip his ass one night.
That's even better than that.
I've always heard Tracy was one of those legit tough guys, like you were talking about Barbarian and Ming earlier.
Tracy is legit tough.
But the sweetest man you've ever met, too.
Yeah.
Was he not the sweetest person? I mean, seriously. I've never been on the wrong side of him.
My kids. He would ask about my kids before he asked how I was doing.
Yeah. The saddest thing was I got to manage him twice. And then the last time we worked on a show together there in Millersville, he was there and he said, brother, I need you tonight. And I said, I'm out there twice tonight. And the guy, I don't want to say the name, but the booker wouldn't let me go out there with Tracy because I was already working in two other angles, which I would have traded both of those for working with Tracy. Now I know it was. Yeah, it would have been. Yeah.
See, me and Crimson, after I trained Crimson, got him in.
Yeah.
He took over the book for a little while up at Millersville, and I was coming in doing commentary and writing TV.
Yeah.
And, they were just like, man, I just can't justify paying him this much money to talk on a microphone. And they're like, he's like, dude, are you stupid? He's writing your TV for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Hold up, Jeff. We're going to get there.
For those who love it loud, Pantheon Podcast presents Rockin' Pod Weekend, Nashville, March 17th through the 19th. It's a rock convention featuring panels, interviews, podcasts, signing sessions, vinyl, comic books, pop culture, and collectibles. Over 50 celebrity guests, including members of Mr. Big, Tough, Great White, Keel, Winger, Accept, and Twisted Sister. Live concerts including Rare Hair on Friday, Keel Fest 2 on Saturday, and Eric Martin's Big Acoustic on Sunday. Plus a rockin' comedy show featuring Courtney Cronin-Dold, Don Jameson from That Metal Show, and Craig Gass from The Howard Stern Show, and a whole lot more. Full details at rockinpod.com. Rockin' Pod Weekend is presented by Pantheon Podcasts in association with RFK Media, Third Power Amplification, and BobbyDreyer.com.
If you're a pro wrestling fan, there's something for everyone at the Cheap Heat TV Podcast Network. From the Pro Wrestling Discussion Show, Cheap Heat TV Live, to the interview show, the Jackson Interaction Podcast with the king of all wrestling media, Gene Jackson, to the silliness of the Whitey Jenkins Show, and the brand new Zip, Xander's Irresistible Podcast with Charles Anders. You can check them all out and much more over at cheapheattvlive.com.
This is The Big Picture, Michael Jablonski. Don't forget to tune in every week to Jablonski's Pissed Off on the Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling YouTube channel.
The fuck's wrong in this sport? He's gonna tell you all about it. He doesn't care what you think. You're gonna hear all about it. Mike Jablonski. He's so pissed off. Mike Jablonski. He's so pissed off. Mike Jablonski. He's so pissed off. He's pissed off.
All right, 92 and 93 were huge for you, and then poof, you went away. Where did you go, man? What happened?
My kids were old enough; they were starting to play baseball and travel. I stepped out for a little while. Yeah, and for about 2 or 3 years, my kids were playing ball. I was traveling with them, stuff like spending time.
Sure. That time you can't get back.
Trade. My dad owned a plumbing company, so I just picked up a plumbing job and started plumbing. I'd wrestle part time and plumb because territories were dead.
Right.
So that's basically what I did, and then it's crazy because I thought I was totally done.
Yeah.
And then Ben Jordan, I don't know if you know Ben Jordan of the Wild Boys.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Ben called me one day and said, "Dude, we need a booker in Columbia. And we think you're the guy." And I'm like, "But I've never been a booker before."
Yeah.
Yeah, but man, he said, with all your ideas, he said, we go to a show and half the finishes on the show you gave. Like,
right.
Well, maybe. I said, let me think about it. So I thought about it for a week, and I said, I'll tell you what, I'll come down Saturday, take a look at what you got, and I'll make a decision. So I went down there, man, and he had Tommy Higgy, Mephisto and Dante. He had the Wild Boys, a whole bunch of talent in there. I was like, hey, I could do some. George Weingroff was there.
Right. Love George. Yeah. We're working with him coming up soon, so he'll be on the show soon.
Are you really? Man, tell him I said hello. I talk to Herbie all the time, and I always tell him to tell George hi. And he said, oh, George said to you, he loves you, man. I ain't seen George in forever.
George is one of them so legit dudes. He started working MMA at 41. You know this, though. I know you know this, but that he worked that pancrase stuff in Japan when he was 41 years old. I mean, that's like stuff you do when you're young, man. And legally blind. I mean, George is with the Wolfie podcast.
He was state champion at Tennessee School of Blind wrestling.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then worked not
to get off subject. Here's a quick story for you on George Weingroff. George goes down to Mid-South, right, for Bill Watts.
Yeah.
And he's a carpenter. He's building guys. Watts bringing guys in, George putting them over, blah, blah, blah. Well, Watts had a deal where these guys would come out and say, oh, I want to be a wrestler, Mr. Watts. He said, well, I'll tell you what, you come back next week, bring $250, I'll give you a tryout.
Yeah.
So, guy would show up and he'd say, well, let me see if I can, hey, George, come here. He said, this guy wants to be a wrestler, so you want to get in there with him and see what you think? George said, sure, Mr. Watts, I'll do it. George get in there and just make their eyeballs bleed, you know. Guys leave crying, begging to let him out of the ring. And he'd give George that money. He'd keep 100 and give George 150. But that's what George was doing. He was stretching guys for Watts.
Yeah, I mean, we could go off about George all day, but it's just amazing because he was working for the Goulises, the Grahams, and the Poffos basically at the same time. And I mean, it was incredible stuff, but I can't wait to have that conversation. So,
yeah, because, you know, Saul worked everywhere. Saul.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Well, if you work for them, you can't work for me. Saul's like, I'll work anywhere I want to.
Right.
So George, you know, had the weight of Saul behind him, so he could do what he wanted to pretty much.
Yeah, and Saul is a huge influence on any manager that should be. I mean, he had the Samoans, he had the Von Brauners. I mean, some great legendary tag teams that Saul Weingroff's name should be mentioned more and more times than it is, you know. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, but anyway.
So after you're doing the booking there in Columbia, what got you back in the ring?
Well, I mean, yeah, I went down there. I said, well, if I'm going to book, I might as well wrestle too. So, I slowly got myself back in shape and got back in there and started. And we were down there, we were drawing big houses. You know, we were drawing 300-400 people down there. And Columbia, that was good with no TV.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
And then that's when Burt Prentice, you know, and Mike Porter was doing Mephisto with Tommy Higgy.
Right.
They were doing, you know, Cool Breeze was out and Porter was doing Mephisto again.
Right.
So that's when Burt said, well, damn, they're drawing all this money down there. We're hurting at the fairgrounds. So let me see what we got here.
Yeah, exactly.
So Burt come down and all of a sudden he's like, oh, Michael, I'm going to help you out here. I'm going to set you up with TV and blah, blah, blah. And here, you pay my bills for a while I find somebody else with money.
Right.
You know,
exactly. Sugar.
that's where, and then Bill Bears was all in on that. So Mike bought an NWA franchise and I booked that for 10 years.
You're talking about Main Event where, you know, again, after I was there, that's where I started at Nashville. This was after the golden days of the Main Event, though. Let's just say that. Yeah. So, I'm sure you could pay the guys a little something back then. So, but we won't get into that.
See, we started out, it was NWA Nashville.
Right.
Then we changed it to Main Event because we bought Reno's TV spot when he shut down.
Right.
Sunday night spot.
Yeah.
So we changed it to the NWA Main Event. And it was Main Event from then on.
But, you know, what's funny is I'm going to get with Brian Turner and we're going to get together and we're going to do some watch-alongs with some of you legends. And what we're going to do is we're going to build the history of that Sunday night TV, too. We're going to really, because it spans a lot further than people realize. You know what I mean? And it's some legendary stuff. But, you know, he's doing some cool stuff on the Brian Turner's VHS Rehab.
Man.
You know,
he's finding stuff for me. I'm like, oh, my God, thank you so much. I'd forgot about that and blah, blah, blah. And it was the very first time we went up, you know, for Burt's TV, and Tim Mitchell, the cameraman, you know, Tim's got every bit of that footage.
He does. Timmy B on YouTube. Yeah, you can see it all. Yeah.
Sean Neal Lone Wolf's got a lot of it too.
Yeah, big old Lone Wolf. Yeah,
he did the Main Event Classic website.
Oh, okay.
Got a bunch of that stuff on it.
Yeah, another great channel. Absolutely.
Tim Mitchell tells the story. He said, you know, Burt was in there and his guys, they were trying to cut promos and they'd been in there about an hour. And Tim was like, man, I'm fixing to give up and go to the house. This is bullshit. Can't nobody talk the way out of a paper bag. Oh, by the way, we've got a couple of guys coming up from Columbia that's going to do interviews. We're trying to help them out down there. Tim goes, oh, great. These guys are the TV guys. So, I walked in and Bert says, hey, this is Tim, blah, blah. And Tim goes, look, this is what I need and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. So, okay, you got it. I said, how much time I got? He said, you got 1 minute. I said, all right. So I busted out a promo on Gypsy Joe because I was working Gypsy Joe in a cage match.
Yeah.
And, you know, and Tim goes, you finished? You dropped the mic? You said, thank you, Bert. Thank you, Tim. And you walked out, and I sit there with my mouth dropped open going, holy shit. This is fixing to get good. And I worked side by side with Tim and Jeff Grimes forever doing that TV. So much that Dominique told me, said, won't you just take some clothes up there? You live at that damn TV studio.
Talk about Gypsy Joe there for us a little bit. You mentioned him there. Talk about working him and stuff.
Let me tell you, the first time I worked Gypsy Joe was in Beaver Dam, Kentucky for Shelby Adcock.
Yes, Shelby Adcock. I was going to,
So Terry Adonis, my wonderful friend Terry Adonis, tells Gypsy Joe, Jeff Daniels kid is talking about, why the hell I got to work this old man for?
Oh,
so
God.
Gypsy come out there, yes, sir, loaded for bear, and he's lighting my ass up, and I'm going, holy shit, do I owe you gas money or something? And he said, don't you ever say I'm an old man. I said, well, hold up, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I got to the back, and Terry was laughing. And Terry knows that Josh was ribbing. That kid never said nothing. He was like, oh, too bad. I beat his ass. Joe, after that, Joe was fine with me. It just, Terry gassed him up. And I worked Joe a million times. I worked a show for Tony Falk one time with me and Joe in a chain match.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget Lori Morgan and what's his name? Kershaw.
Sammy Kershaw.
Sammy Kershaw were there.
Really? Yeah.
So Joe said, get me right here in front of him. He said, take that chain and just punch me and tear the skin off my head. I'm like, Joe. He said, oh, do it. Man, I wrapped that chain around the side of my hand and I hit his forehead. It just peeled like an onion,
Oh.
And I was like, oh my God. And he's like, hit me harder. And I was like, Jesus Christ, Joe. To cut him open with a handsaw.
Yeah. Is that where Lori Morgan got her song, I'm Looking for Something in Red?
I don't know. Could have been. Tell you another story about Lori Morgan and Sammy Kershaw. We did a show up in Springfield.
Yeah.
And, Sammy's a big closet mark wrestling fan.
Okay.
So he wanted to do something so bad, and so, they were friends with Ronnie Brown, the Money Man, Badass Brown.
Right.
And, so Sammy's like, man, just let me do something. So he said, well, come back here and talk to Jeff. Jeff's in charge of everything. So I said, all right, we do something. I said, hey, look, here's what we'll do. I said, when we come down ringside, I said, I'll come traipsing around, the apron and, down on the floor, making our entrance, and I'll see Lori.
Yeah.
And I'll say, oh my God, you're Lori Morgan. And she'll say, yeah. I said, and she'll stand up. I'll say, oh my God, you're more beautiful in person than you are on TV. And she'll say, oh, thank you. And then I'll look and I'll say, oh my God, Sammy Kershaw. I said, you stand up and say, yeah. I said, and I'll say something smart. I said, and just shove me. I'll take a big bump. I'll come up and security will get between us, like I won't let me get to you.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that would be wonderful if we could do that. I said, yeah, okay. So, we come around there. I do the deal with Lori. Oh, you're more beautiful in person than you are on TV. And I said, Sammy Kershaw. And he stood up. And it's the first time I was standing up with him. And he's like 5'7". So I'm thinking, all right, what am I going to say?
Yeah.
Stands up and I said, you look way bigger on TV. The old wrestling thing, you look bigger on TV. I said, you look bigger on TV. Well, I didn't know he had a small man complex.
Oh, man.
That son of a bitch. And he didn't push me. He punched me in the mouth with everything he had.
Wow. Yeah.
I come up on that floor and I was going to wipe his ass.
Yeah.
He grabbed me. I said, no, you better turn me loose. I'm fixing to kill this son of a bitch. We got to the back. He come back there and he said, how was that? I said, let me tell you something, you little son of a bitch. I said, you ever hit me like that again, I will kill you. I don't give a shit about your record label. I will kill you. Oh, I'm sorry, man. I got a little carried away. I said, yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, my Sammy Kershaw story. Another Louisiana boy.
How was that? Yeah, Louisiana boy. Come on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. One of the, it's what someone would maybe call happened there with him, something like, weird or odd or disturbing behavior. How about we talk a little bit about Tim Renesto and some disturbing behavior?
Let's do it.
Man, Tim's cool.
I love Timmy. We got a little crossways there at the end, but we're good.
Yeah, I don't know him personally other than just in the locker room and stuff. He always seemed like a guy that was a little hard to warm up to, but once you did, he had a dry sense of humor about him. But, he comes from a legacy, a family, that has a great history in the business and stuff.
Yeah, his brother Tom Jr. I love all those guys, man.
Yeah.
Dad, mom was a wrestler.
Yeah. Talk about the tag team, though. How did you all?
I think Tojo 2000. I was going to work him, and because that was one of those points where Byrd was taking TV back over. So let me put my thumb on Jeffrey and ruin his career because he's hotter than any of my guys.
Of course.
So he had me working Renesto.
Right.
And me and Timmy went out there and just freaking tore the house down. It was the first time I'd ever met him, first time I'd been in the ring with him. And we got to the back, and I said, "Oh, my God, that was the easiest match I ever had in my life." And he said, "I know, man." He said, "I couldn't believe it. We didn't even have to talk." I said, "I know." Yeah. It just flowed.
Yeah.
So over a period of the next month or two, I'm short heels, overabundance of baby faces. And Timmy says, "Man, let me turn heel." I said, "Better yet, why don't you turn heel and me and you will tag up and we'll do something?" He said, "Yeah, that's good." So we did the heel turn on him, and me and him hooked up. And we worked together, just us. And about a month or two in, Timmy came to me and said, "Man, I got a gimmick we could do." I said, "Yeah, what is it?" He said, "What if we call ourselves?" He said, "You watched that movie, Disturbing Behavior."
Yeah, yeah.
I do this gimmick where I'm like a little bit out there. You don't know if I'm crazy or you don't know if I'm working you or, and everybody's just scared to death of you. He said, "Disturbing Behavior."
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
And then I come up with the deal, the two music notes, one for the D, one for the B, and then you write disturbing over to the top round and a crooked line under it is behavior, and it looks like a dick and balls. So we figured we'd make a fortune out of T-shirts with that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Disturbing Behavior.
Yeah.
So we start working, and we bring this tag team in, Sudden Impact.
Mm-hmm.
And we worked those guys for 2 years straight, and it never got old. The people bought everything we did, and we traded the Mid-America belts back and forth. Well, Howard Brody called and said, "Hey, look, I need you to send somebody down here to the 51st, 52nd, hell, I don't remember which one it was, anniversary show in Tampa." So Porter said, "Who are we going to send?" I said, "Well, me and Renesto and Sudden Impact." He said, "All right, that works." Mm-hmm. So we went down there, and it's straight politics. Everybody's like, "Well, this and that and blah, blah, blah." It's the best of the best from all the territories. And on top was Carino dropping the belt to Hashimoto.
Right.
So the Heavenly Bodies were the new Heavenly Bodies. Vito and Chris were the tag team champions. So we go in with the Mid-America belts, and they said, "You guys got like 11 minutes, blah, 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 try to make it good." So, yeah, okay. Yeah. So we went out there and tore the freaking house down and put them over. Dropped the belts to them, put them over in Tampa. And Bill Barons and Howard Brody called Mike Porter and said, "Hey, Mike," so what the hell were they doing? Mike said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Why would Renesto and Daniels come down here to this show and put those young baby faces over?"
Yeah.
Mike said, "Well, hell, I don't know. Jeff called the finish. Ask him."
Yeah.
So Howard come to me and he said, "Jeff, why would you do that?"
Yeah.
I said, "This is not our territory." I said, "Our match means nothing to these people here in Tampa. This is your home." I said, "We went out there, gave them a hell of a match, left them happy, slipped the baby faces over. It's just good business." And he said, "You know what? That is good business." He said, "Thank you." I said, "Well, you're welcome. Thank you for having us." And we get back to Nashville 2 weeks later, phone rings, and Porter calls me and says, "Hey, Howard Brody just called." He said, "When do you and Ernesto want the world tag titles?" I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, they're going to put the world titles on y'all." I said, "Shit, whenever." I said, "All right, we're going to build something in Columbia." I said, "All right." So we started building this thing up, right? So we're still working with Impact. So we have a USWO show. We booked them for 3 nights. It was TV, and then we had USWO, and then we had our show where they were going to put us over. So they come in on TV and just mop up somebody. I don't remember who it was. So the very first night, Impact, because they're Mid-America Tag Champions, get the shot at them. And we're bitching, raising hell. They don't deserve it, blah, blah, blah. So they go out there, and they're, Chris and Vito are just making them look like $1 million. And they're just about to go over. And we go out there, hit the ring because of disqualification. It costs them the world titles. So the next night, we go over for the world titles in Columbia, and it puts them as the number one contenders, puts Impact as number one contenders. So our thing continues to go, only now instead of Mid-America, we're the world champions. And, we traveled around to some of the, the territories, Battle Zone, and up in Indiana, and, around down to Bills for Hardcore Hell. And, we traveled around a good bit with those belts. But the deal was we were going to get the belts for about 4 months. Then we were going to drop them back to the bodies. They were going to finish their allotted run, which was like 6 more months. Then they would drop them back to us, and we'd get a 2-year run with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So, we did our time with them. We go down to Florida. We put them over in Winter Haven, drop the belts back to them. And that's right about the time that TNA was starting up.
Yeah.
And they wanted us to come in and work. Jarrett wanted to see us as the NWA World Tag Champions. And Ernesto pitched a bitch because he wasn't going to pay us. He wanted to come in and showcase us.
Sure.
I said, Timmy, come on, man. I said, we get a pay-per-view every freaking Saturday if we get this spot. We're the world champions. What's going to stop us?
Right.
My dad would kill me if I went in there and worked for nothing. He'd tell me I was an idiot, blah, blah, blah. I was like, Timmy, come on, man. Everybody and their brother's going in there doing this, trying to get a spot.
Right.
I ain't doing it. So we didn't do it. So we go down, drop the belts to the bodies, and right about the time that happens, they announce that they're going to be NWA, TNA, and they just procured all the world titles.
Oh, man.
So the bodies immediately had to go to Pensacola or somewhere, Sarasota, I'm not sure. They had to go somewhere and drop it to what was those twins? What did they call those twins? They came up here as the Johnsons. They had them dressed like condoms with masks.
I know what you're talking about. Oh, my gosh.
The Power Twins.
Something like that.
Who I'm talking about.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
But anyway, they put the belts on them. They came in, couldn't hang, so they dropped the belts to somebody, and then all of us were done, and it was just Jarrett's guys.
Yeah. Do you feel like that would have been an opportunity, though, that you would have been able to take advantage of? Do you feel like that was a no-brainer? Basically, it was an opportunity that if you could have talked Tim into it, you would have had a job there.
Absolutely. You know who got our spot? Got our spot?
Who's
the
that?
Natural.
Oh, of course. Well, there you go.
Got our spot.
Yeah.
Well, they were first guys. They deserved it. Those guys were tremendous. I love Andy. As a matter of fact, Dominique's going to see Andy right now getting her back fixed.
Oh, okay. Well, good deal. Yeah. Yeah.
But,
Chase and Andy were great.
Yeah.
I like the tag team of Cassidy and Chase, too. The Hot Shots.
Yeah, the Hot Shots.
Great
Actually,
tag team.
It might have been the Hot Shots at that point got that spot.
Yeah. Man, what a great tag team they were, dude.
But I have no doubt in my mind we could have got that spot because if you look at any disturbing behavior matches, dude, we were a well-oiled machine, the three of us. I mean, it was nonstop from get to go. And they pull those belts off of us, and then all of a sudden they had the belts, and they're like, well, we're not getting those world titles back, and I'm sorry, Jeff, I promised you guys a 2-year run with them. So, but Timmy kind of screwed that up for y'all. So, well, yeah, I get it. So they brought back the NWA television title because I had the longest running TV of any NWA franchise.
Yeah.
They didn't call it the World TV title.
Right.
They called it the Worldwide TV title. So Byrd did a little deal. He got it. Well, anyway, I ended up with the belt.
Yeah.
And over a period of time, Bill Behrens started referring to it as the World TV title. And he said, look, I promised you those tag run for 2 years with the world titles. He said, I can't give you that, but I can give you this TV title. So I had like a 3-year run with that. I even got a trophy from them for the longest reign as the NWA TV champion.
That's wild, man. That's awesome.
It's like the little, the guys wrestling that trophy.
Yeah.
Like when Memphis Wrestling used to come on.
Barron's had good stuff going on down there too. I know Luke Hawks is down there. There's some great guys. Wolfie was down there some. There's some great guys working down there too. So, you were in there with them. So I know we're kind of running low on time here. I don't want to ever rush you off, but there's one thing I do want to talk about before we go. Obviously, you and I, we got to meet. The first time I ever met you was on a benefit show, and I can't remember who it was for, but it was a benefit show in Columbia. I was managing Plunkett and Jablonski, and you were there. Honestly, what I thought you were was Powers Booth from the Tombstone. And I was like, to me, that's who you look like at the time. I had obviously known who you were, but what I mean by that is to me, you look like him. But talk about this, before we let you go, the main person I want to talk about too is the brotherhood with Josephus. Josephus was a friend of mine, loved him to death. I do know that he's one guy that absolutely loved you, man, and absolutely looked up to you, and y'all's tag team, the Brotherhood, was so cool. I mean, just talk about Joe a little bit.
He's just such a great guy. I mean, well-spoken, well-educated, everything that you saw in the ring was 180 degrees to his real life. He was a gentle guy, you know him.
Yeah,
Yeah, we came in and we did that gimmick. I quit NWA because I'd had enough. And, Paul Adams called me and said, brother, just come go to work. It's fun over here. I said, wrestling is not fun. He said, it is fun over here. I said, all right. So Christmas night, I showed up at a Saw show, choked Hammerjack out with a coat hanger. And we started this deal, that it was a biker gimmick that we didn't call any names, but supposedly, it was a big biker gang in the Houston area. We won't call any names. I don't get hunted down. But we called it the brother. We would just say the Brotherhood.
Yeah.
And then I was sent in. There's a wartime concierge now, and it's time to pay the piper.
Right.
So I was sent in to take care of some stuff with him, and they brought Josephus in as like my bulldozer.
Okay. Yeah.
It totally changed his gimmick, from the Josephus Brody, which he was doing the Brody gimmick, but he still leaned toward that. But we did the biker gimmick, and it was so fun. I just loved doing it. And then he started breaking off on his own and doing some stuff, and I was on my way out. I'd had enough, man. I was like 52 years old and had a heart attack and wrestled 2 more years after that. I was just like, man, I'm done.
Still the coolest dude in the locker room, though.
I said it once, I said it 100 times.
Yeah. So Joe, to me, we did a tribute show to Joe last year on the Wolfie D show. We'll do it again this year. We'll make sure to have you on to say some words about him. But Joe, to me, he was a genius. I think he was probably Menza level genius. He also was so well read. He also was not above talking about some crazy stuff too. So the funniest thing to me is he knew that I was a huge Gary Hart mark. I'm always been a Gary Hart mark. I modeled my look after Gary Hart. It helped that I was 6'2", bald, and had a beard. But at the same time, I modeled my style and everything after Gary Hart, even down to the razor blade I carried with me. But
he was a dangerous man.
He was. I tell you, brother, Muta. Anyway, so he said to me one day, and I'll never forget this, and you know this because I know you know Joe in his deadpan demeanor. He said, Jimmy, you like Gary Hart, and your name is Jimmy. He says, why don't you go by Jimmy Hart? And then...
And he was serious as a heart attack, wasn't he? Never broke a smile.
And then I said, but Joe, he was like, oh, wait. I'll never forget that exchange.
He was a pretty good ripper, but it was very dry humor.
Very dry.
You really had to know him to get it.
Sure.
But it was hilarious, the stuff he did.
I'm so happy he got a little bit of rub down there in NWA with Billy Corgan. I didn't love the question mark gimmick, but I was glad that he had a gimmick on him. I know every one of us have had gimmicks we didn't like, you know what I mean? And to know that he had something that was getting him a little bit of a rub, I was happy to see that. And, to just drop so soon, I know, we're never promised the next minute, you know what I mean?
Right. That was a shock. That was just like true. Everybody was shocked.
Yeah, and heartbreaking. And I didn't want to end this on a bad note, but at the same time, it is a little sad to talk about Josephus in that way. But I did love that gimmick y'all were doing, that tag team. I love the brotherhood because, it was right around the time of the Sons of Anarchy TV show. Not to say y'all were ripping that off. I'm just saying it was.
I think that's where Paul got that from, though.
It was, and, elemental of the times, and Sons of Anarchy was doing big things. And, and I remember that gimmick going well. And then obviously you and I got to work together some more later on. But, Jeff, we could talk all night and then a little longer, Oh,
absolutely.
Can we get a promise that you'll come back on and talk some more with us sometime?
Yes, please. Stay in touch.
Yes, sir.
I thoroughly enjoyed this. It's been really fun, and it's good to reminisce a little bit, Yeah. You get away from it, out of sight, out of mind.
Absolutely. Well, I know the whole scene out there looks up to you, man. So to know that you came on my show and my brother's show, it means a lot to me that you did this. So we'll definitely make sure and promote it. Now, tell me this, where can they find you? If the listeners are out there and want to learn a little more about Jeff Daniels, where can they find you?
YouTube, NWA Main Event Classics.
Yeah.
Brian Turner has got tons of stuff. He's starting now some disturbing behavior stuff coming out that
I saw that.
I had no clue that was even around.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was any footage of that at all because Byrd made sure we got no TV time when we were the world champions.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I've talked to Brian. We've got something cooking that I think is because we're kind of the audio version of a not only do we represent all of pro wrestling in a sense, I do have a strong feeling for that Middle Tennessee area, obviously, for myself. So we do represent a strong portion of that with Cassidy and Chris Michaels and Hammerjack, and we've had all kinds of guys on, and we're going to have a ton more. But Brian is also the video version of that. And Brian, honestly, is doing such a cool thing that I know it's good for the guys to be able to see their stuff, especially for some of you guys that probably thought some of that stuff would, like you said about that, would never be seen again, And,
since he started doing that, and I'm just like, oh my God, Brian, thank you so much. And I mean, it warms my heart to see some of this stuff. And in the process of all that, Tim Mitchell comes out and says, I've still got all that footage on beta. And Brian says, well, I've got a machine that I can dub that over. So I think they're supposed to get together and swap some footage. So
wow.
There's no telling what kind of footage is going to be out there before long. And
I can't wait.
Extremely happy because I made my mark here in Middle Tennessee.
Yeah, you did.
I've been around. I've caught the end of the territories, but Middle Tennessee made me.
Is that where you are nowadays, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm still right here in Nashville.
Yeah. How's it going out there?
Oh, it's nice, man.
Yeah, I miss it. Yeah.
It's out here on the lake, and I'm happy.
Hey, man, you deserve it, brother. Well, I thank you so much for coming on our show. Jared, you want to say anything before we go?
Yeah, I just appreciate you coming on, Jeff. Nice to talk with you and nice to meet you through this. And we're looking forward to having you in the future, too.
Jared, thank you so much. Jimmy, thank you. I appreciate this. And if we're getting ready to get off here, I'll just leave you with a little cripplerism, if so.
Please do.
Yeah. If I said it once, I said it 100 times. I'd rather go to my mama's funeral than my own. They don't call me the crippler for nothing. Somebody's going to get hurt.
That's beautiful.
That's
we'll be
awesome,
right back.
man.
Yeah, we'll be right back after these messages.
If you're a fan of rock music, I'd really appreciate it if you took a moment to check out my podcast. It's called the Decibel Geek Podcast. We've been doing it for about 10 years now. We talk about Kiss. We talk about Ozzy. We talk about Motley Crue and Guns N' Roses and Metallica. We talk about all the legends from the 60s and on, up to brand new bands that you should be hearing about today that you're not going to hear on the radio. It's Decibel Geek. Wherever you find your podcasts, you'll find us there. If you love rock and roll, I can almost guarantee you're going to love my show.
All right, we are back, and thank you all so much for listening to that excellent interview we had with Jeff the Crippler Daniels. I'm telling you, man, is he not a cool dude, or is he not? I mean, he just is got great stories, right?
Man, I mean, he was just going. I mean, he kind of made us adjust our questions on the fly because he was telling stories that we were going to ask, and it's like, oh, we don't need to ask that question anymore.
Yeah.
He's a storyteller, man, and that's great. It works out great for a conversation like this.
Yeah, it does. And he was so, I was like, hold up. Let's go
he blew right past one thing. And I was like, all right, go ahead, man.
I know. I was like, bro, let's go back here. All right, so you're already 3 years into the business, and what was your first match?
Yeah.
But like I said, Jeff's a great guy. We're going to have him back on. I can't wait for that. We'll have him with his longtime manager, valet, and wife, Dominique, who actually is a legend in her own right. So we'll definitely enjoy having her on. I would love to have her perspective on things too, because truly she was trained basically by Jeff and Skandar Akbar. So think about that. You've learned the business from Jeff, who's amazing, and Skandar Akbar, who's honestly one of the most underrated managers of all time. And personally, what's so funny about that is my gimmicks in the business, Prince Omar Al-Kazan, Skandar Akbar was my number one influence for that. And then, of course, I turned into Gary Hart, which was my second influence. But my very first influence absolutely was Skandar Akbar. So anyway, great episode there with Jeff. We'll have Jeff back on, whether we do it with some watch-alongs, whether we just keep talking about his career, because, the funny thing is that, he's got so much other stuff we could talk about. I feel like we just kind of scratched the surface there with him. So
yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. So, the next thing I want to do here, and this is something that you and I have discussed, and we're going to introduce a new segment to the show. Now, this one, is interesting because it's so well suited to you, because this is literally kind of like your part-time job, essentially. So what we've done,
side hustle.
Yeah, your side hustle. So we've developed a new segment that you came to me about, and you were like, hey, I want to do this. And so the name of the segment is what?
Sheik fell down a YouTube rabbit hole.
Yeah. So essentially, Sheik fell down a rabbit hole. The name is pretty much explanatory to what he's going to talk about. But the cool thing is you're going to talk about a quick video, or just a video that you've seen for the week that has just really struck you. You started in one spot and you ended up in another. And I think this will be fun. Now, of course, with every segment that we do, Jimmy being the guy that thinks this way, I have to have an entrance song. Right. And so whenever I need an entrance song, I always have to go to my homie Tracy Byrd. Tracy Byrd is a longtime punk rock, horror punk, hard rock legend in the Southwest Virginia, West Virginia scene. He is in a huge band, amazing band, longtime great band named Blitzkid. Then he's also in an incredible band called A Gathering of None that, to me, they kind of do all the music that he and I loved back in the day. So like, we were big fans of a band called Chum. We were big fans of a band called Only Living Witness. And basically Tracy, not to say they're ripping them off, but they're taking that mantle and they're going with it. And I just love it. So if you haven't heard A Gathering of None, I know you've probably heard Blitzkid, but if you haven't ever heard A Gathering of None, go do that right now, because they are the main music providers for all of my James Rock Street production shows. So whether you hear him on Live and in Color with Wolfie D, whether you hear him on Jablonski's Pissed Off, whether you hear him on the mothership here, Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling, you'll hear music from Tracy in some way, somehow. So I don't want to get too far into that, but go support him. He also just wrote a brand new song for Mike Jablon's tag team called Bad Omen. It's killer, man. You can find it on our Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling podcast Facebook page, and just go check it out, man. He does great stuff, and I think y'all will love it. I guess I'm going to shut up because you're going to take over here. So let me go ahead and say this just like I always do. DJ, hit the music.
Wrestling videos sent you down a rabbit hole. Wrestling videos sent you down a rabbit hole. Sheik found wrestling videos sent you down a rabbit hole. Sheik found wrestling videos sent you down a rabbit hole.
So, brother, have you ever been scrolling on your phone, looking at stuff like particularly YouTube? I was scrolling on YouTube, and, you know, I start out my time on there with maybe watching a few YouTube shorts. You know, I'm a big fan of the shorts on there.
Yeah.
Might watch a wrestling video, might listen to a legend and his podcast, and might watch a video game video or whatever. And then all of a sudden I find myself 5 or 6 clicks down the road. I'm watching something I've never watched before, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
And I came across a video of Roddy Piper in TNA from December 4th, 2002. I never really knew much about Roddy and TNA because I was in college here and then and had my mind on my studies somewhat instead of wrestling. So I see him in the ring. I'm watching the video, and he is just cutting a scathing promo on Vince Russo.
Yeah.
I mean, he is just obliterating Russo about basically saying that, you know, Vince Russo or somebody like him is responsible for the death of Owen Hart. And he even calls him his cousin Owen because he always referred to the Harts as his cousins, although they weren't.
Vince Russo said he is the Antichrist of professional wrestling. Russo, don't give yourself so much credit. You are simply the Bin Laden of professional wrestling.
Whoa!
You are a coward. You are a coward that comes and sneaks in by night. I've got a question for you fans. The ones at home, you here with children. For 2 years, Russo wrote all kinds of things for the WWF. I have this question. Hey, Russo, did you write in my cousin Owen's death? Do you write home? Did you ask about his family? He's dead. He was my cousin. He's dead. Why? Because someone like you, who knows nothing about the technicalities, put somebody 90 feet up. Why? There's no consequences to pay for you. Well, you know what? Everybody pays the piper, man.
It's just amazing. He's just like totally destroying Russo. And Russo actually comes out and I don't know if he thinks he's going to get one up on Roddy or if he's going to take the microphone and then stop it. It doesn't happen though.
Yeah.
And I just always thought, what was Vince Russo going to do? He would have got whipped all over that ring by Roddy Piper. Even an older Roddy Piper would have just destroyed him. It's not even funny what would have happened to Vince Russo. But the topic does make you think. Like, I think there are real concerns in the business that Vince Russo's kind of Jerry Springer-esque ideas probably led to some people damaging their careers, dying like Owen Hart, or, you know, other misfortunes. You know, the Hawk thing, Road Warrior Hawk, you know, he did that angle where he was drunk and everything like that. And, you know, that hit a little too close to home, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, he had the brawl for the all idea, which was, you know, kind of crazy, really throwing hands out there. And they could be entertaining. And they probably a lot of stuff we saw from Vince Russo was. But the fact that Roddy must be really convinced that he or somebody like him that had stroke in WWF at the time contributed to the death of his friend, his cousin, whatever he wants to call him, Owen Hart.
Yeah,
it's kind of crazy. Have you ever seen the video before?
Oh yeah, I saw it. Yeah, for sure. And here's the thing about it. You know, Piper. There's two ways to look at this. Okay, Piper absolutely and positively, if he felt convicted in that way to say that, he would absolutely go out there and say that. That's the beauty of the believability of it. But also, Russo is almost sadistic in a way enough to write that to where he would make his own angle about him being evil and killing Owen. You know what I'm saying? So there's and that's the problem with that one, is because I do believe that Piper would say that. If he felt that, I 100% believe that.
I heard an interview with Piper that said it was a complete shoot.
Yeah, and again, I love Piper, but Piper is a worker to the core.
I know that. I'm just saying but that's again, the only thing I could go on is what Piper said, that it was a complete shoot. Now, again, like you said, all wrestlers are workers. So,
and he's one of the best of all time. So, you know, knowing that though, I like to take it at face value just because it's the way I feel like Piper should feel. And so, you know, not playing devil's advocate on this one, I want to actually believe that Piper felt that way. So yeah, I saw that. I thought it was a great one. You know, it's funny. I mean, it's funny because when you're like doing the YouTube thing, man, you get in there, and how many times have you heard this? Yeah, I went in there, my car got declined, I bought the whole store.
Yeah.
Now I own two-thirds of the company. Yeah. It's like, oh, Shaq. That's amazing. So it's either a Shaq story about him buying everything.
My biggest purchase in Walmart history. I've heard it like 4 billion times.
And then also there's the other one of Snoop Dogg's, like Nas and Tupac. Nas ain't got anybody with him, but he's got everybody with him.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
You know? It's like
he ain't got nobody with him. Okay.
Yeah, but he's got people with him. It's like Snoop Dogg always is great for having those quips where he's like, they can take a piece of his conversation and put it on there. And Snoop Dogg is superbly quotable. Shaq is just great for showing that he's rich. Anyway, that's how I usually end up falling down the rabbit hole of YouTube. So it's good that you came out to at least a wrestling video, you know. So
yeah. I mean, we're going to try to keep it on this with this segment to wrestling videos because
sure.
If we, it's hard to tell where we'll end up if we
let the rabbit hole really go far. Yeah, but I think that was a good one, man. I think actually, how long is that video, by the way?
It's like 5 to 6 minutes, something like that.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely put the link in our show notes for you to click on that and watch that, because honestly, man, I tell you, I don't know if we'll develop this into a watch along. I don't know how we'll do this, but I almost think that eventually it could be a watch along where we actually watch the video and we'll play the clip on the show. I don't care, and we'll see how things go. But yeah, good job on the very first Sheik fell down a rabbit hole. Man, all right. Well, good job, Sheik. I enjoyed that segment, brother. That was awesome.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's I'm addicted in a way to YouTube videos, so it helped put them to some good purpose for our podcast. So
yeah, man, absolutely.
Always good.
You keep me in fresh material too, because you're always sending me a video of something. So, I appreciate that you do that. You also co-run our podcast pages, and you actually do that for the Live and in Color with Wolfie D and Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling. So, if you see something on YouTube that you like, 50% of the time it's you, right? So, we'll stick with that. And I like how you do that. You help me out. You kind of understand the algorithm a little better on things. And so that's very appreciated. But I think that's it.
A co-host should help the host out, right?
A co-host should help I'm your co-host and you're my co-host. We're just co-hosts here. But anyway, I think that's going to be it for the day. I'd love to just tell you all right now, if you don't mind, go rate and review. If you've just heard this on something, either subscribe, like, rate 5 stars, give a little review, say, hey, this is great. Hey, do this. Hey, we'd love to hear you do this, whatever. We're always open for comments, but also compliments. So, once again, got to thank Jeff. He was awesome, man. Thank you so much, Jeff, for coming on the show. Very appreciative. We'll have him back on, like I said before. But as we always say, please go to our social media pages at GMBMPW. That's on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Make sure you subscribe, like, follow, click whatever, friend, however you want to do it, and do that on all of those pages. We greatly appreciate it. We're even going to probably get a Plastic Sheik Instagram one day, right?
Someday.
Yeah, one of those days. What's funny is Insane Shane, he was like, tell the Plastic Sheik to come follow me on Facebook. And I'm like, yeah.
Good luck with that.
I'll tell him to follow us first. Anyway, that's funny. But anyway, we thank y'all so much for listening in today. You got anything for him, Sheik?
Thank Jeff again for coming on and giving us an interview and talking to us, telling the stories. And it's just a good time to be a wrestling fan and in the wrestling podcast world.
Hey, I like that. We're going to leave it with that then. So thanks again, y'all. Have a good day. We'll be back next time with Mr. Gene Jackson watching Thunder in Paradise. Yes, by the way, that's going to be hilarious. Nice. Gene's a comedian too. He's not only a podcast host, he's actually a live working comedian. So that is part of the main reason I brought him into watching the first 2 episodes of Thunder in Paradise next episode. So stick around. You're going to love it. Thanks again. See you next time on Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
Don't forget,
fight the Crippler.
or maybe don't.
With a tear in my eye. This is the greatest moment in my life. This has been a James Rock Street production.